Call this meeting back to order of the Social Affairs, Science and Technology Committee dealing with Bill C-45, an act respecting cannabis and to amend the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, Criminal Code and other acts. Today we're dealing with primarily producers, retailers, and this is panel 2. It goes for 1 hour, and I welcome our panelists from the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance, Russ Crawford, President, and Jason Green, Director. From the Cannabis Trade Alliance, that's the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance. Okay, now the Cannabis Trade Alliance of Canada, Rosy Mondin. And Hiku Brands, Will Stewart, who's Vice President, Corporate Communications and Public Affairs. So, I would ask that each of you, well, one of the two of them, or
Mr. Crawford.
Mr. Crawford, okay, for your organization. So if 3 of you would then give opening presentations, up to 7 minutes, please. And I'll start with Russ Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the invitation to attend this session today. We'll start by just introducing ourselves to you so you know who we are. My name is Russ Crawford. I'm a director of a company called Naturally Splendid Enterprises. This is a hemp food company based in Pitt Meadows, British Columbia.
Hi there, my name is Jason Green. I'm a industrial hemp farmer in Saskatchewan. I'm also a director with the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance, and just recently this year I've joined forces with Canopy Growth Corporation to be the head of their agricultural division for industrial hemp.
So our goal today is to give you a little bit of a fresh look on the material in terms of hemp and the non-psychotropic portion of the cannabis plant that's been an industry growing in Canada for the past 20 years. The Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance is a not-for-profit national organization. We represent about 400 members, from producers to processors and retailers, plant breeders, researchers, and the like. We've engaged them extensively during the course of the legalization process and the discussion around the legalization of marijuana and the impact on the hemp industry. We're here today to tell you that we support Bill C-45 and its most recent versions in the proposed regulations. It responds very, very well to the requests that we've made on behalf of our members for a number of changes to the industrial hemp regulations, which are, as our understanding is, will be included as a subset to the official regulations of the Cannabis Act. So rather than having hemp scattered throughout the whole document, there will likely be a section that's dedicated directly to industrial hemp, which is important to us. So our message today is to address some of those things that are important in order for our industry to fully flourish. And I think you would have received a pre-document that described a little bit about our industry, so I won't go into that in a lot of detail. Certainly we're prepared to answer questions on that and the size of the industry. But importantly, we see the opportunity to remove regulations pertaining to criminal record checks and security clearances, lock storage of seed and those kinds of things, testing for THC reductions and that kind of thing, as a positive influence on the industrial hemp farming business. Also, allowing whole plant use is an extremely important step in terms of capturing the full value of the plant. We are a food and fiber industry. There are other opportunities within the plant that we want to pursue, and our farmers want to capture the full value of that benefit as growers. And the crop is ideally suited for the Canadian environment and our rotation of current crop production. We're also pleased that we're informed that it will likely be removed, the hemp and all of its derivatives, from the list of controlled substances. This has certainly been a negative moniker for us to try to develop food products that attract mothers and seniors and everyone in between to use hemp when it's still defined as a controlled substance. So that's a significant improvement. We still have our challenges in terms of creating clarity between hemp and marijuana. We talk about education and awareness. That's extremely important to our organization. We have a lot of work to do in that area. We don't want to see a repeat of what happened in 1937 when hemp was thrown under the bus with marijuana under the Marijuana Tax Act. And we're much more well informed at this point in time, and we think we're educated to the point where we see the differences, we're able to capture the value and provide the protections that we need without interfering with or reducing the potential opportunity in the industrial hemp sector. We still have some work to do in that. There are areas that are to be determined later in the bill, including outdoor cultivation of marijuana and the impact of that on the hemp industry. There's some concerns there from our industry and how that might turn out, and certainly the marijuana industry has similar concerns. So those are discussions that will happen at a later date. But we also would look forward to the opportunity to discover the full potential of the plant in terms of cannabinoids, the opportunities, the health benefits, and how we can capture those and do the research that's necessary in order to develop the products in a safe manner. So this is where we tend to overlap with the marijuana industry a little bit. There's not a black and white. There's not a line that separates the two organizations, and that's why you're seeing marijuana companies acquire hemp companies. The cannabinoids are present in both varieties of the plant. So there's an opportunity to do some development there. Our goal is to build the industry. We're currently about a $180 million industry. We project that by the year 2023, with all of the proposed changes to legislation, we can easily achieve a $1 billion industry, which will work towards the government's agenda of $75 billion in agricultural exports. So hemp can be a big part of our agricultural future, and we look forward to the opportunity to pass this bill and move forward and help our industry grow and achieve the objectives that we feel its potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On to Cannabis Trade Alliance of Canada, Rosy Mondin, Executive Director.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today. It's truly my honor to be here. I'm a lawyer as a background and a criminology undergrad, a bit of a policy wonk. So it's truly, I'm grateful to be here and be able to help inform on this bill. I've been an advocate for legalization pretty much my entire adult life, which my views were formed as a criminology student. Knowing people who are in the industry, it just didn't make sense that people were being criminalized for the use of this product, whether they want to consume, possess, or cultivate. So we established CTAC actually in 2015 prior to the election to speak on behalf of those parties who were currently cultivating under the medical marijuana access regulations that wanted to convert to the commercialized framework under legalization. So what we had in Canada was 40,000 people who had actually put up their hand and said, yes, I would like to legally be able to cultivate medical cannabis under this regulated regime. So 40,000 Canadians in 2001, well, starting in 2001, actually said that they wanted to do this. So the first group in the world to ever cultivate under license. These are a lot of the ones that when we talk about this illicit market, they're part of this under-regulated market. I call it under-regulated because they do operate under license, and we have to remember this. They do it for personal production reasons. There has been diversion out of that marketplace, but unfortunately, we believe that it's been due to Health Canada not having the staffing or the ability to provide proper oversight to that program. They're not scary people. These are truly middle-class Canadians, people who are looking to supplement their incomes, people who are cultivating because they find working with a plant quite therapeutic. They're not organized crime. I can talk about that in a bit. But for their involvement in the cannabis industry, they are otherwise law-abiding citizens of Canada. So we set out to advocate for inclusive regulations to allow a pathway for these farmers to cross over, to become part of a legalized framework, not only for themselves, but also for their products that are being developed in the industry. I think it's really important to understand that this industry has a lot of talent. Again, they're not criminals, but for the fact that they were operating outside of a specific legal framework. But these are people who are PhDs, they're researchers, technicians, farmers, geneticists, chemists, of all types of stripes, of all social economic backgrounds, of all political backgrounds that do participate in this industry, be it as a consumer or as a cultivator or processor. So the majority of these people do want to be licensed. They want an opportunity to participate, and they want to be able to provide safe and tested product, and for it to be accessed by those of age of majority. We've had some great achievements. We are not membership-based. We actually collaborate with other groups to bring together viable policy recommendations. We've done so. We had 3 policy papers that were submitted to Parliament. We've put in numerous submissions. We've had numerous consultations with all levels of government. We were invited to testify at the task force, mentioned 3 times actually in the task force reports. That was a nice achievement. And we've presented to Pacific Caucus. I'm from British Columbia, so where that robust, mature industry exists. The sky hasn't fallen in BC, and I can get to that. And we also were invited to help organize a task force between many of the British Columbia growers, processors, and to meet with Health Canada representatives and the Secretariat of British Columbia to get their feedback as to how the regulations would affect that. In addition to my role as Executive Director of the Cannabis Trade Alliance of Canada, I'm also the CEO of Quadrant Canatech Corporation, and we design, manufacture, and supply high-precision automated extraction equipment and processing equipment. We also work with participants to set up processing facilities, so end-to-end turnkey facilities to extract the cannabis oil and create the value-added product at the end. And we also design and supply the and delivery devices. Right now, it's vape pens. So I know a little bit about the extraction, so I'm happy to answer questions in that respect. And finally, to top it off, I'm also an advisor to CAMCD, which is the Canadian Association of Medical Cannabis Dispensaries. So one thing that had come to my attention was that there's a group out of the U.S. called Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and they are quite highly partisan and really the only group in North America that espouses anti-reform policy positions when it comes to legalization, and a lot of their positions are quite contrary to the evidence and the emerging knowledge that's around cannabis use. They're not neutral, and despite what they say, they're not university-based. So when it came to my attention that this paper was being circulated, I thought it was really important, and again, because I do collaboration with the industry and I try to be a go-between between the industry and government to present proper policy recommendations, we wanted to ensure that the senators had well-balanced evidence before them. So I organized a cross-sectoral group of Canada's prominent researchers, legal advocates, industry experts, academics, and public health officials. And in less than 3 weeks, we drafted a reply, which I believe you have in front of you now, which is informed by evidence, to ensure that the Canada's legal framework will enable a safe and legal marketplace. So some of the witnesses before you in the past have alluded to this report. There's 6 main topic areas. I don't want to go into it too much details. It's going to cut into my time here, but we touch on youth use, which shows that legalization has little impact to overall youth rates. The impairment, which Bill C-46, which isn't before you, but because it was discussed in the SAM report, we did address it. That shows that DUIs are down in Colorado and Washington, and that you've heard that THC presence is not an indicator of impairment, as it can stay in the body for a long time. This is an issue especially that concerns medical patients. Hospitalization and ER visits. Prior to 2013, there was no visits, likely because there was no reporting because it was illegal. So people have fear of arrest. Accidental ingestion is negligible in the context of poisoning with respect to other household products that we can find. Oh my goodness. Social justice, crime rates, opioid use, these are all addressed in the paper. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to talk about, so the organized crime, there's not a lot of organized crime. There was a data pulled by the CDPC that showed 5% of the files pulled were actually in organized crime. They're regular Canadians that do this. If you delay products or legalization, we have people that are going to be going to the unregulated market that doesn't protect the youth. The youth will continue to access the products. By enabling a framework that allows for IDing, that stops people from accessing, right there. So maintaining the status quo does not eliminate. Extracts and concentrates, the market is moving to that, so please feel free to ask me about that. I've got some figures for you. Potency, there's more just to THC. The plant is very robust. A lot of the compounds work together. So when you get into extracts, the formulating of the product and bringing all the compounds together have benefits medicinally and also social use, depending on the intoxicating effect that you want. Vape pens can have higher potency than the ingestibles. And home grow should be allowed. I've got an infographic that touches on that. Again, we know it's not, if you ingest it, it's not toxifying. And I think it's really important to think about this. Cannabis has been illegal for less time than it's been illegal. So on April 23rd, 1923 is when it was actually made illegal. We don't really know how it got slipped in. But think about this. This was before the invention of the Geiger counter. It happened before the invention of television, the pop-up toaster, aerosol sprays, and the discovery of penicillin. So there's been so many developments since then in our culture. We have to keep this into consideration. That's all I'm going to say right now, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Well, you've certainly invited a lot of questions based on your document here. Will Stewart from Hiku Brands.
Thank you, Senators, as well, and Clerk, for having me here today. Thank you for extending the invitation for me to speak on Bill C-45. By way of background, I'm Vice President of Hiku Brands. Hiku Brands is a proudly Canadian company, which is publicly traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange, and we have a series of carefully curated cannabis brands, which seeks to support and educate a community of cannabis consumers and the cannabis curious. Tokyo Smoke is our storefront brand, which is currently operating in 5 locations. We are the only licensed producer that has existing retail in operation today. Of course, those stores do not sell cannabis because that would be illegal. Those are coffee shops and serve as a jumping off point for our community and our education initiatives. Tokyo Smoke won the coveted Brand of the Year at the Canadian Cannabis Awards last year, despite not being able to touch the product at that point in time. We're actively participating in a number of provinces where private sector retail will be allowed. We were awarded one of only 4 master licenses for the province of Manitoba, which will allow us to open 9 to 16 stores there. We're in processes in Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, as well as Newfoundland and Labrador. We expect to have 20 to 30 cannabis dispensing stores in Canada by the end of this calendar year. Hiku has a fully ACMPR licensed grow in the Okanagan Valley called Doja. It's focused on health and wellness and the outdoor lifestyle that the Okanagan Valley is famous for. We recently also announced a merger with Weed MD, which is another fully licensed ACMPR facility in southwestern Ontario. Together, and after we're finished our fully funded expansion plans in 2019, we'll be capable of producing 56,000 kilograms of cannabis out of those 4 facilities. Hiku is also proud to have, as one of our brands, the leading female-centric cannabis education and product company in Vanderpop, as well as a Quebec cannabis brand called Maitri as part of our company. Recently, we announced a strategic investment into Oceanic, which is located in Newfoundland, which will be about a 15,000 square foot facility to start, which will also allow us to open retail footprint in that province of Newfoundland and Labrador as well. Together, all of these brands represent Canada's first fully vertically integrated cannabis company, which is currently operating in multiple retail environments this day. I've been fortunate to work at Hiku to build the company and execute on our plans for the adult recreational market. I wanted to focus my remarks today on a few key topic areas and then take your questions should you have any. First, I think it's important to articulate that we believe that the Cannabis Act is a good piece of legislation. Far too often in this line of work, I know you hear lots of complaints. Sometimes it's nice to say nice things about the legislation as well. We believe that the bill strikes the right initial balance between protection of the Canadian population, and we would expect policymakers to take, as this country seeks to end prohibition, along with private sector involvement to create a robust, sustainable sector here. At its core, the bill will see licensed production model regulated by the federal government, with the freedom for provinces to do as they see fit on the on the retail front, as well as municipalities to tweak those plans should they see fit as well in their own jurisdiction. We support all of those initiatives. We also support the initiative in the bill that allows for home grow. We don't see that as something that should be prohibited. Second, I want to speak briefly about one aspect of the Senate's work that keeps many people in this industry up late at night. Simply put, the timing is a serious consideration for the industry, as well as the private sector capital that is at risk. I don't raise this as a criticism of the Senate's work, quite the contrary. I raise this as an encouragement to your work to be completed by June 7th, at least report back for the vote on June 7th. I know that many have raised issues on timing. You've probably heard that many times before. Potential delays of both the bill, like intentional delays, but also unintentional delays, including summer recesses, broader consultations, police forces, etc., all cause problems for this industry and could reduce Canada's advantage as first mover advantage in this sector. This is a sector in its infancy. Without a doubt, there are many uncertainties, a lot of them around this table as well. Pushing forward with legalization will, however, have 2 immediate effects to benefit Canada as a whole, regardless if you are Canadian or regardless if you are a cannabis consumer or not. First, legalization sends a message that Canada at the federal level is open for business. Canadian companies have already started to expand internationally. You heard that on the last panel. And Haiku Brands has also started on that with an investment in a legal cannabis producer in Jamaica. Perhaps most importantly now is the development of Canadian intellectual property, from research and development to grow systems to business acumen. Canada can be a leader, and we should not cede that ground to other countries as they move forward with different types of medical and recreational regimes. We can and should have a first mover advantage with this legislation. Second key reason to move forward with legalizations is to begin to reduce the black market ownership of this sector. Will they be eliminated overnight? Of course not. I don't know anyone who suggests that they will be. But moving on this sooner rather than later will start that process. To reduce organized crime, to reduce youth exposure, and to encourage a legal regime are all very good reasons to push forward now. As Senator Munson said in the National Post, if we keep delaying it, we will simply keep the illegal market open longer. Finally, I want to spend my last few moments with you today on a few quick areas where we think changes should be considered. And you heard a lot of them on the last panel, so I'll keep it very brief. First, we feel strongly that to begin to make a true dent in the black market of cannabis, Canada and the government should move to legalize forms of cannabis that are widely accepted by Canadian consumers today. Namely, that regulatory regime for edibles and concentrates be approved upon legalization with the rest of the products. And I would encourage you to ask lots of questions about extract and vape pens and other things to Rosy. She is a true pioneer in this space and a wealth of knowledge for this committee. Canada is home to many, many quality producers of extracts and concentrates, and legal regimes around the world, even where not federally legal, have managed to establish regulatory frameworks that Canada can certainly learn from in the immediate days as a starting point. If a reduction of the black market is core to this legislation, then vape pens and edibles need to be part of that from the outset. Second, plain packaging, as currently proposed by the Health Canada draft regulations, puts this sector at risk of not being able to establish a fully functioning legal market that can work towards a mature industry which can educate and inform customers to help them make the choices that are right for them. Insisting on plain packaging, as well as not including edibles and extracts, does put the legal industry in a difficult place to battle with the black market. We need at least some of the tools the black market has if we are to stem that tide. Thank you for your attention today. I look forward to your questions. I've spent the last 20 years of my career in and around politics in Canada, including some overlap with Senator Dean in Ontario politics. And it's an honor to have addressed you today, and I look forward to your questions and comments.
Okay, before I turn it over to my colleagues, I've got a couple of quick questions. I want to understand, first of all, what the difference is between the Cannabis Trade Alliance of Canada and the Cannabis Canada Council, which was in the previous panel, because I think you said that you also represent the industry as well, but you don't have membership, you said.
So we work with participants that are primarily MMAR growers. So Cannabis Canada, they are the industry representatives for licensed producers under the ACMPR.
Okay. And you don't have membership?
Well, it's hard. Okay, so as membership, so we have supporters that cover basically our disbursements. I do everything pro bono for CTAC. We just felt that it was just really important to have a voice to speak to those who want to be included. Okay. So yeah, the other one, they speak on behalf of the LPs.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Crawford, we had some discussion in the last panel about outdoor growth, and the industry indicated they don't want outdoor growth for commercial purposes. Does that affect your industry at all?
I might let Jason speak to that as a farmer. I think he would be better suited.
Well, yes, it's very important right now that there's an issue in Washington with the marijuana varieties being outdoor. The problem is with marijuana, it cross-pollinates with industrial hemp. Vice versa, the two will cross-contaminate. So our concern is with industrial hemp is we've worked hard to stabilize these varieties that guarantee that they remain below the 0.3% THC threshold. So we are concerned that if we have cross-contamination, it will affect our genetics for us to stabilize and keep those below the 0.3% THC. So we do hope that if outdoor production of marijuana is allowed, that there's some type of protection in place, distance measures or something, that we don't have cross-contamination of the two varieties that would affect both of those industries.
But this bill, C-45, doesn't affect your outdoor growth.
No, it does not right now currently.
Okay.